I'll start my timeline in 1913 because this was when Henry Ford developed his first assembly line in Highland Park, Michigan. It's a very well known story, and at the time the concept was revolutionary and reduced the time taken to build a car from over 10 hours to 1.5 hours. At the same time, the cost reduced by half to $350, and for the first time, that word flow production was introduced into the lexicon. Think of that image of a stream flowing steady and continuously to its mouth. It was this concept of flow that would play a major part in the lean and agile concepts of the future. The next date of note is 1948. This was when Toyota, again another car manufacturer, began its journey to improve their assembly line and introduced the Toyota Production System, or TPS. It was developed by two engineers, Teiichi Ono and Eiji Toyoda. It is regarded as a socio-technical system, recognizing the interaction and the interdependence between the technology and the people who work with it. It focused on three core objectives: the reduction of muri, or overburdening of both the system and the people, mura, or the smoothing out of unevenness, and muda, the elimination of waste. All three are important components, but within that, much focus is given to waste. A set of 7 types of waste were identified, including items like overproduction, defects, unnecessary movement, etc. An eighth item was introduced in the 90s around underutilization of people. The Toyota production system was built on 2 pillars: a concept called just-in-time production, JIT, which simply means that we only build what we need, and this introduced the idea of a pull system. Now, it's rumored to have been conceived after reading about supermarkets in the USA at that time in the 1950s, and the efficient system they used to replace products when stocks were depleted. Now, the Kanban framework emerged out of JIT as a scheduling system. Kanban would later on make that leap into software development, and today it's mentioned alongside Scrum as an agile software development tool. The other pillar is a concept called Jidoka, which describes automation with a human touch. A simple way to look at it is to let automation continue until a problem is flagged, at which point the person steps in and fixes that problem before it is allowed to become an even bigger issue further along the road. Now, maybe that's too simplistic, but I won't expand further now. It's worth mentioning that 14 principles were formed called the Toyota Way, and these principles underpin the Toyota production system. These included JIT, Jidoka, along with concepts like Kaizen, continuous improvement, visualization to prevent hidden problems, and growing leaders who believe in the philosophy. So let's go back to the video. Over the next 30 years, Toyota would go on to develop the Toyota Way. And as this gained traction around the world, and as it moved west, it would morph into what we now call lean manufacturing, or simply lean. This term lean was first mentioned in a paper in 1988, Triumph of the Lean Production System. It's still focused on Muda, Muri, and Mura, and also focused on increasing value by removing anything that does not add value. So, all in all, the second half of the 20th century saw the origins and the flourishing of lean in manufacturing. Over time, lean principles began to spread wider than manufacturing. Nowadays, we hear about lean production development, lean construction, lean government. This list goes on. In each case, the objectives can be very different, and hence the methodologies and the thinking have evolved to solve the problems for that specific area. So let's move on to Agile. Iterative and incremental development can be seen as far back as the 1950s, but I'll start this story in 1986, because this was when a Harvard Business Review article, The New Product Development Game, used the concept of Scrum, i.e., rugby Scrum. It denoted a shift from that idea of relay races with teams handing the baton to teams to another team to the idea of a single unit of people working together from start to finish to complete an endeavor. It was in software development where these principles gained traction to become agile as we know it today. Through the 90s, a number of different methodologies and frameworks for software delivery were being conceived and growing. XP, RUP, RAD, to name a few. Scrum was also beginning. In the early 1990s, two groups were working with Scrum in their respective companies. And in 1995, Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber jointly presented a paper describing the Scrum framework at the Business Objects Design and Implementation Workshop. And Scrum continued to evolve with the others. In 2001 came the now famous gathering of 17 individuals in Snowbird, Utah. This group, who represented many of the methodologies that were being practiced at that point, came together and agreed on an overarching manifesto with 4 values, could be called objectives or perhaps policies, and a set of 12 principles. It was the birth of Agile, and it was quickly followed in 2002 by the Agile Alliance and the book Agile Software Development with Scrum by Schwaber and Beadle. Earlier, I discussed the evolution of lean manufacturing principles spreading wider than manufacturing. It's worth mentioning that lean software development emerged from a subgroup within the newly emerging Agile community. Built on the lean principles, it looks at lean tools and practices that still align to the Agile principles and ways of working. And as such, lean software development is regarded by some literature as a subset of Agile software development. I prefer to think of them as the intersection between the two movements. It was from 2001 that Agile began to take off and became the beast that it is today, recognized as a highly efficient way to develop products, but with the caveat that its simplicity to understand does not translate into ease of implementation. There are many hurdles to Agile rollout in an organization. To give one example, it doesn't fit well with the current business models that are in place in the world today. It is to address this disparity between the organization's management model and the emerging product development framework that I now turn. Within 3 or 4 years of the Agile Manifesto, we began to see the emergence of new frameworks to deal with the area of enterprise Agile. Frameworks like Scrum, at their core, focus on how to get a team to work in a highly efficient and sustainable way. But it doesn't really address the question of how multiple teams work together to deliver value. So from 2005, we start seeing new frameworks: LESS, SAFe, Nexus, DAD, and these aimed to address Agile at an enterprise level. More recently, in the same way that we have seen Lean branch out past manufacturing, we've begun to see the Agile spirit move beyond software development. From bank auditing to marketing, enterprises are beginning to use Agile methods to deliver. The term Agile software development is being replaced with the term Agile product development to denote its benefits are beyond its original remit and applicable to many groups who are delivering complex emergent change. And that brings us pretty much up to today. I hope this helps to give you a very quick whistle-stop tour of Agile and Lean. If you have any questions or comments, include them below or ping separately on LinkedIn.